I'm gonna speak on it. So yeah. So
Baller.
I'm gonna try to help people. I guess. I'm gonna pretend to be an expert. Yeah. What's up? Good to meet you. Yeah. Not yet.
Hello.
Damn!
There we go.
I like
Is this
yeah,
social
that's my
media
sister.
cam?
Yeah. You're gonna pay me for this, right?
You sit
Use my
over down.
likeness.
Yeah, that's right.
Sit down.
Okay. So before you had to like put your mouth on it. That's how I like it. But you do. It's worried about everybody else. But I think
I gotta pay extra for the editing now.
Yeah.
just gotta. Oh my god.
Yeah. कसं कर का?
म्यूट बीट मग तुका आवाज बंद कर
Sit up here.
मागं आवाज बंद कर ना
पप्पा like with हे स्पीकर बंद कर.
तर तुका आवाज बंद कर
Yeah. हा रेकॉर्ड करत असतो.
फुल स्क्रीन आता घालणे
Okay. I think we should be good.
हो फुल स्क्रीन वर घालणे
Hey, is this cool? Test.
तुझं connection unstable असं म्हणून होत ना.
Is this?
ना पप्पा ऐकू येत.
Is
Yeah,
this
you're
connected to just your phone?
Yes.
Hello.
Yeah, पप्पा ऐकू येत तू.
पण चांगले हवे
Rashmi, which side do you
I don't know how
want?
to do it. I don't know. हा रेकॉर्ड kan धरता मत सांग.
Hey, which chair do you want, Content Queen? What's your good
Doesn't
side?
matter. All sides are good. Look at this. Human
That's
perfection
awesome.
right here.
So which side do you want?
You can take that one. You're left-handed, right?
I'm left-handed. No.
Are you not? I thought you were.
Left-handed.
Well, good for you.
Oh my God, I'm sore though.
Is this good? Does this thing work? I'm going to start with a story about this thing right here. So we had a guest about 2 months ago. We had one of those cases where it was like, it just ended up being fraud. We had someone that stole a credit card, stole an ID, and booked like 30 days with us. And we found out like a weekend. And so I went to the house or the apartment and knocked on the door. And people that were on some good came to the door and talked to them like, hey guys, like I just need you to get out of here. Like I'm not gonna call the cops, I'm not gonna do that. Like just please leave the house. And so I'm like, if you could give me like $500 though, that would be great. Because it's only like 1,000. And so they're like packing up their stuff, and as we're doing this, a guy's like walking around, he's like expecting his Tesla that's in front of the car, in front of the condo. And he's like, hey, is this your condo? I'm like, oh yeah, we manage it. He's like, oh, well, this is a stolen Tesla. Okay, so this is like bigger than I thought. So these people in our house, they rented a Tesla for a test drive and just took off. Like didn't bring it back. So the story is that like they didn't have any money, but they did have a speaker. So they gave me a laptop and a speaker, and that's how I got a portion of my rent for that month. So welcome to STR, y'all. That's the world. I'm glad you're all here. It's a great industry. I'm sure you guys have experienced nothing like it. I'm Lucas, and
I'm Amelia. Nice to meet all y'all. So, actually, I have a funny story. I met Rashmi at my very first SCR event almost 2 years ago. And so she's there, and she goes, yeah, I just got started this year in SCR. I'm like, okay, cool. Like, tell me a little bit about your portfolio. She goes, yeah, I just bought 6, with my husband. They're no big deal. I also run a restaurant as well on the side. But yeah, I'm not that busy. So from like the moment that I've met you, I've always admired you, and it's been so neat to watch you grow and see your story. So it's been really neat. Now she's on to hotels. I think over 50 properties with Scriven. So yeah, you want to tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. Hi guys, can you guys hear me? All good? I'm Rashmi. Like, don't rush me. I make it nice and easy. And I started in STRs actually in 2020. It's been 4 years now. We bought our first property. We thought what would take us 3 months to rehab, took us 8 months, way over budget. Don't ask my mom because she paid for it, which she's right there. And it is still our best property. If you guys know Fredericksburg, that's where we bought out there. We bought 3 out there. The goal was really clear to get financially free and to have time freedom. So right after Fredericksburg, we're like, let's go all in, and we started buying out of state because we wanted to make sure, coming from the restaurant world, we didn't have another job, which is really easy to do in this property management business. So we scaled up, we got to 6, we were doing good, we're hanging around. And then December 24th, 2022, like my world came crashing. We were in 3 different states. I don't know if you guys remember the freeze that happened, but everything shut down. I'm like putting like Christmas dinner in there, and like my systems are just like, I was like, I self-manage. Life is amazing. It is not amazing when like you're canceling people's Christmas bookings because everything's frozen over. And that day I was like, I will never do this again. Next month, went and hired my first VA for this specific business. And I was like, I don't care how much it's going to cost me. I'm just going to do it. And since then, we've scaled up the portfolio. I'm now over between, I manage hotels as well as short-term rentals. We're over 100 doors under management. And I just closed on my first hotel on Monday.
And you still run the restaurant, right?
Out of the restaurant game.
Oh, is it my turn?
Yeah.
Mr. Scriven.
All right. Am I just telling how I know Rashmi?
Yeah, just tell
how
me.
awesome.
That's all it's
Let's talk
about.
about Rashmi some more. Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. Scriven Hafes. I started in vacation rentals right in the middle of COVID as well. I came from value-add multifamily. I was buying duplexes and triplexes. I actually still have a full-time W-2. That's a whole other story. I still have that today. But I was buying duplexes and triplexes, value-add. I completed a 3-duplex portfolio rehab and got it stabilized, and I was feeling really good. And I was like, man, I'm getting really good at this. And I spent some time on my spreadsheet, and I was like, I only need about 150 of these, and I can quit my job. So I was like, I got to do something else. And right around that time, I had a realtor friend that reached out to me, and she said, hey, you do investments, right? I've got somebody looking at a condo on the Guadalupe River. I don't really know the terms to work with investors. And I was like, just send me what you're looking at. And I looked at it, and I called her, and I was like, are these numbers real? And she was like, yeah. And I was like, well, when you're done getting one for her, I want one. And so a couple of weeks later, bought my first condo that was a vacation rental. I learned by just getting on Instagram. I was like, who does Airbnb? Tell me how to manage them. I'm buying one. And we closed, and this was March of 2020. So like a week later, the world shut down. So it was vacant for like, it was crickets for like the first 10 or 15 days. And I was like, well, that's great. That was a huge mistake. And then just bam, like not a vacant night for 90 days. And so I was like, cool, I'm going all in on this. So same thing as Rashmi. I had this one in New Braunfels where I live on the river. And I was like, I wonder where the best place is to do this, because I think I could do it anywhere. And Smoky Mountains was next. So my first, 6, 7 properties, it was a few in the Smokies, a few in New Braunfels. And now, and then I guess fast forward a little bit, we got to 7 properties in 5 markets, self-operating. I had one virtual assistant at that time because I also had a land flipping business. So he was kind of just running guest comms during business hours and doing tasks and helping with the land flipping business. And it was an awkward amount of work. So instead of thinking like what Rashmi did and saying, I'm just going to systematize more of it, I was like, I'll just start a property management business. That'll be easy. So anyway, fast forward to today, we've got a team of 6 or 7. Rashmi and I work closely together. She has her own portfolio on her side, and then I call her my fractional COO and also my boss because she challenges me on everything. We work really well together. But we've got 3 to 4 virtual team members at a time, and then a few people on the ground. We've got 45 properties total. I own or co-own 14 of them, and the rest are all managed. So that's that.
Beautiful. Thank you. Hey guys, I'm Lucas, 5-star vacation home rentals. Amelia and I host this group for you. I think the mic goes in and out because I'm a little too far. Damn, I should have got a better speaker from that. We have about 30 luxury properties in Central Texas. We'll do about $3 million this year in revenue, so about $10K per month per property. We're pretty selective on what we bring on, which has really helped us in the saturated market. But enough about me. We're here tonight to teach y'all all about virtual assistants and why all of us have the time to be here right now while managing large properties or managing large portfolios, right? So housekeeping first. That door right there is a refrigerator. We got water in there. We have sparkling water, so please grab some. And then right on that kind of bar top, we have some paperwork. So there's 4 pieces of paper. I printed y'all out some of our SOPs just for our VAs, so you can kind of see like what our checklists look like. And so we'll kind of go through some of that stuff. So could I have anyone that's just over there like pass those out? And then the ones on the right are the sponsor for tonight, which is CS Outsource. So we're going to talk about VAs. We're going to tell you kind of what it takes to hire them, to train them, and to really
I have a
utilize
water,
them
but
in your
I wouldn't
company.
get a sparkling.
And then there's
only if you're
also
gonna
a
get one.
company that does all of that for you, right? So if you're like, this is way too much, like I just want help, then there's people that do that, they train it, they manage them, and so you have both those options, which are beautiful. So let's dig in. Essentially, I'll be interviewing Scriven and Rashmi. We're going to dig into their VA management style, and then I'll kind of chime in with some of the stuff we'll do with VAs as well. Y'all ready?
Ready.
Yeah.
I'm a co-host, and then just invested in my first SDR.
Love it. Thank you. Yeah, and then we'll hand it to you. Sweet. Either one, whoever wants to go first. So really, just since we're concentrating on virtual assistants, and we're gonna kind of we're gonna start on the hiring portion of this. So tell me about. I mean, you can talk about your first one if you want, but just in general, what does that process look like right now to find awesome VAs? So how are you hiring them first? Where are you finding these people?
So I'm happy to actually talk about my first one. My first team member that came on from my property management company wasn't actually my first virtual assistant. Early in 2020, I was hanging around like these Facebook groups with all these tech bros, and they were like, "We hire offshore talent," and I was like, "Oh, I want to hire offshore talent," but I didn't have anything to like give them. I run a restaurant. And I realized everybody kept bragging about Canva, and they were like, "It's so easy to use Canva." So I got Canva, and I like timed myself. I was spending like 10, 15 hours a week designing one flyer for my restaurant. And I was like, this is not a good use of time. So I went to onlinejobs.ph and I was like, I have $200 a month. Like that is my all-in budget. Who can I hire to do graphic design for me? And I actually hired my first admin assistant. I paid her like $3 to $4 an hour, and I was like, "This is never gonna work out." It's been 3.5 years. She's still with me. That's Naomi.
Yeah, so she works with me too.
And so I got started very baby step. Like, how can I just like put myself on $200 a month and like commit to doing that, and then scale that up. So I took a business restaurants, which is very in-person, labor intensive, took that to basically be on graphic design, online ordering, all that kind of stuff, and then scaled it to find my first VA. I have actually lost and fired close to 6 or 10 VAs. I've made a lot of mistakes in like the hiring process and growing. It is part of the process, so don't freak out if that happens to you guys. But I don't know what everyone's kind of like quantity of properties is. Do you mind if we do a poll? Is everyone here like who has 0 properties wants to get into STR? No one. Okay. No shit. Who is around 5 properties? Okay.
So 5 or less. 5 or less.
5 or less. Okay. 10.
10 or less.
Okay.
Either way.
Either way.
Just manage.
Okay. And then who here has virtual assistants already? Okay, a couple of you guys. And I'm guessing everyone else is looking. Okay. But that's how I got started. Yeah.
Mic me.
Is it better without the mic?
I don't know.
You hear us? Yeah.
You should, yeah, it's better.
It's better without it?
It is.
We'll just go without it.
Okay.
I talk loud. Rashmi, the 6 to 10 that you've fired, does that count the ones of mine you've run off or just yours?
I forgot about them. No, so
Okay.
maybe we should add a couple more.
Okay.
We'll get into that. Don't worry.
No, it was for the best. So with us, I guess whenever we got started, luckily I had the vacation rental management business at an awkward size, but I also had the land flipping business. So I had the luxury of saying I can afford one full-time employee and I can split, what they're doing. So what you have to ask yourself is, how much work are you willing to do to find the VA? Because Rashmi mentioned onlinejobs.ph. That's not me. I've had a few people send me like their hiring, I guess, process and how they hire from onlinejobs.ph. It's so easy to post on there and get flooded with responses that you have to essentially create your own automated process to vet them. You have to give them a task and do all these other things and have them answer questions on a video interview just to narrow it down to 10 or so that might be a fit. That's my experience. So every time I've gone to onlinejobs.ph or I've looked at people's processes, I've realized that will never be what works for me. I'm more of a pay extra for somebody that's going to do a good job kind of guy. And there's several ways to do that. So the first way we did it was a headhunting firm. So you can locate firms, which at the time that I did it, I only knew of 1 or 2. I think like My Outdesk was getting big at that time or already big. And then I went through Steve Rosenberg, who's like a real estate influencer / pilot, cool guy. And he's real big on VAs out of Mexico. And so I had them bringing me virtual assistants that had already had like disc profiles, background checks, video interviews. And then their rep would sit in with me on the call, and we went through 2 or 3, and then I found the one where I was like, yeah, this guy. And I think I paid them a $2,500 referral fee. That was great for me because I already kind of knew what I needed. Because part 2 of that is you got to know how you're going to hire, right? Like, do you have the infrastructure to sort through online jobs PH and save a bunch of money? Or do you want to pay a headhunter where you only have to pay them once, but then you own everything about that VA? And that's nice because you're in charge of their pay scale, their vacation time, and all of that. And you can pay them a little bit less because you're not paying this company every single month, right? So that was the reason I chose to go that way. But if you're going to do that, you have to have the infrastructure to get them onboarded. And so I at least had the clarity at that point to choose that model because I knew that I was going to have my first one help with all of these tasks in the land business and all of these tasks in the vacation rental business. And so I was at least able to say, hey, I want somebody flexible and malleable that 6 months from now, I have no clue what they're going to be doing, but right now it's going to be this. And if you're going to do that, you have to have built out some sort of a manual or a lot of videos and processes and procedures, or have the bandwidth to be able to spend 3 to 4 hours screen sharing with this person the first few weeks, which is what I did. And then option 3 would be you're going to, and this is more of an option nowadays with like vacation rental management business. You have firms where they're like, we have people that are trained on Airbnb, hospitable. A lot of them have been Airbnb employees. You don't have to worry about creating an employee contract for them. We're going to give you that. The trade-off is you're going to pay a markup and you're going to pay us every month. It's nice because you get somebody as close to plug and play as you can possibly get. The downsides are if they're frustrated about PTO or culture or any of that, it's kind of something that's outside of your control. So you just want to make sure that you understand the contract you're signing with these folks, if there's a buyout option or not, if you really like the employee. But there's pros and cons to every model, right? Like I'll never be the online jobs PH guy, but I know several people that get a lot of really good team members for very affordable because they have that infrastructure. I've had success at different periods of our business where we've paid straight up sourcing companies to have an employee for an entire year. We've had a lot of luck with like the headhunting placement type services, but we've also had 1 or 2 of those fall on their face where I've essentially just wasted $2,000 because they didn't work out. And the company's not going to give you my money back. They're like, well, we'll give you another one. And I was like, I don't really like the first one, so I think I'm out.
So you've pretty much done everything.
Yep.
Yeah.
So
I love that.
Yeah.
I mean, literally and that's like the cool thing when we're talking about VAs is like you really have to think about like where you're at and what
Yep.
do you want, what do you have the capacity to. And when we start to talk about training and like SOPs, like I think you'll quickly start to get that even just by looking at that sheet and looking like, oh, that's just like a booking instruction and there's like 15 different tasks we had to build out just when like what do you do after this person books, right? So yeah, I'll just briefly so we've done it a few different ways too. The way that I found my best VA and my person who's now kind of director of ops of that entire back-end team, I just asked other people, who's your best VA? Cool, let me talk to them. Hey, do you have like 5 to 10 people that you know that are like really good VAs? And I'll give you $500 if you can find me someone if I keep them for 30 days. So that's how I found my first one. I think 5 people showed up for interviews. I hired one of them, and he's been with me for 3 years. And everything that you see there, he's actually created that. That's not for me, so that's a beautiful thing, right? Now he does all the hiring, so we're kind of in a different place. So he does the online PH. Really, what we do now is we'll get about 50 to 150 applications. He'll kind of whittle that down to 30. Previously, then he would do first interviews, and then he would bring me 15 candidates. I would do 15-minute interviews in one day. So we would just like fill the whole day. And within 3 minutes, I would pretty much either cancel the call or know that they're getting a second interview. And then we'd usually hire 3 to 5 of them at the same time. So we hire 3 to 5. Again, the pay range is $3 to $6 per hour. So we'd pay them for the entire week, all 5 of them, all 3 of them, and we'd give them the same exact tasks. Hey, bring this project back to us, do this, do that. And then it's not just having to go, hey, who do we think is the best from an interview? Now we're going, who's the best, right? Who brought us the best product? And because what you'll find with these VAs is a lot of them are awesome. Some of them are working for like 3 or 4 different companies at the same time, right? Maybe 10 different people at the same time. Some of them don't have the capacity. Some of them, their internet goes out every other day. And so it's a really easy way to kind of whittle that down of just kind of hiring them all at the same time. So that's the hiring stuff. Anything else to add from hiring? And then we'll take questions after remarks.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead. Okay.
Okay. I'll go.
You guys are awesome.
That's why we work so well together.
Yeah, I love it.
I just take over. So my actually Airbnb VA was she reached out on Facebook. Like I just comment on like other people's posts, and she saw I was commenting, and she was like, "Are you looking for a VA for your Airbnb properties?" And I was like, "As a matter of fact, I am." So I didn't even do any background checks. I just like hired her, and I was like, the worst thing that'll happen is she'll see my credit card, right? And I was like, it'll be $500. Like I put a limit on it. I was like, let's go. And that's been a 2.5 year relationship now. And she has then brought on all of her team members to grow our portfolio. And we've grown from short-term rentals now into hotels. So you'll be surprised once you actually start putting out like content out there, just helping other people, like who sees that. And I actually have a great inbound source of just VAs who reach out to me on Facebook and they're like, hey, I'm a VA. I have a YouTube channel. I have like 3 people who just reached out to me via comments. You'll be surprised, like they watch the stuff you post on there. And so that's another great source as well.
Yeah, I was gonna say, once you get some momentum and you've gone through a few of these and you have some rock stars, we don't have to recruit that hard anymore, just because we network with other companies that are a similar size, that are, constantly changing, where they no longer have work for somebody that's really good, or maybe they're pivoting, or our team that's rock stars know other people that are looking for work. So in the past, like I would say year or so, it's become a lot easier. We've kind of gotten momentum, so we don't have to go through as rigorous of a process. But that is a big thing, is make sure like try to figure out if they're working for other companies or not. Because we almost brought on someone recently, and I brought it up on a call, like, hey, we're going to hire this guy that this person in our group referred to us. And then a guy called me after the call, and he was like, he works for me full time right now. And I was like, oh. So we might want to address that. But
I would love to know, what is like the first task you give them? Like, what is the test task? And then how long until you put them on customer facing after you vet them?
I was like, how much damage could they do? I just put them all on it. I'm like, here's the Airbnb login. Like, yeah, I was, but you have to understand the position I was in. I was coming off of Christmas, like with 6 properties. I was like, I need to be like out of this thing. So
Has that changed though? Like that was your first one, but what does that look like?
Well, now my lead hires everyone else, and she's responsible for training them. And we have Loom videos, so it's changed now. Like it's her job to give the logins at this point.
Yep.
But at the first one, I was just like, I just need this like off my plate. But the first thing we actually did was we use OwnerRes for a PMS, and she just had to go through all of the messages. And I actually had them build out my SOP, so I didn't spend any time building my SOPs. Like I had some level of structure, like I had the Google Drive folders, I had photos, I had some structure, but I let my team build out the structure. Little things like my admin or my social media VA, she loves Asana. So I tried to put my management team on Asana, and like it worked for 2 weeks, and they were like, we hate Asana, we love Monday.com. And I was like, I don't want to do any work anyway, so I'm like, we'll go with Monday. I still hate Monday.com. But we use it because I'm like, it's not about me, it's about my team. Like, what do you need? Some VAs like to be paid in American dollars, some VAs like to be paid in pesos. So I'm like, I don't care. Like, I want my life to be easy, and I don't want to do that much. So how can I build out my system? So we went to Monday.com, and they actually built out all of our boards on Monday.com, and I kind of give them the big architectural. So I'm like, this is what I want to see. Here's a Loom video, and then they go and build out. So the first thing I still even today do is have them go through every property, and I'm like, look at all the guest comm and like whatever details we're missing. I'm like, build me your sheet, because that tells me if they have attention to detail. But that's also how they get to know every single property that you have.
Y'all are roaring ahead into training already. We're in hiring. We're in hiring. You're going ahead. I'm just kidding. No, that's awesome. Anything else on hiring or questions on hiring before we start getting into this awesome stuff that we're getting into right now?
I'll just say the first task that I had my first VA do was, because I was still new, most of my stuff was on Airbnb, and I had like 2 of them on Vrbo, but I had like 4 or 5 listings. I had him create the Vrbo listings for everything, and like kind of create some basic integrations of software that anyone could figure out, and write up a procedure on how he did it. That was the very first thing I had him do.
Quick question: have any of you guys used Upwork or GetMagic?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, those are the ones that I've used, and they seem to be the best for hiring. It's like super fast.
Do you find it more pricey though? I always find it more expensive.
Well, Upwork at first, because like there's like a fee, but honestly, I'm hiring people for like $8 an hour. So it's, at the end of the day, the fee's like maybe 3% of whatever
This is just for regular VAs, or this is for particular tasks?
For regular VAs, I have a team of them because I'm insane. I'm crazy busy. But the other one is Get Magic, and they will find your VAs for you, and they like have a full staff, and they're also really great, but they're more expensive than the ones you'll find on Upwork. I think they're $15 an hour.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What are the ranges that you guys are paying your VAs?
We're in the $3 to $6 range. My thing has been if we're at 15 or 20, I would rather find local talent. We're like part-time hiring at like that. Like I have a cutoff kind of at like the 10 to 12 mark. We've also used Fiverr. That's been pretty good at finding just like random projects
Yep.
when I was. But like guys, like you do have to be careful. Like I know I'm like, let's just give them everything. Like I was just at the point, but like we have scale systems back. Once you gain trust with them, it's a lot easier to kind of like jump to the next level.
Mm-hmm.
But you also don't want to get like we use LastPass. We do use like with Airbnb, I wasn't too worried. Like I get a notification if they changed like my bank account details. Like, I'm just paranoid about like everything at this point. But you have to like take the jump, right? So we've used Fiverr, we've used Upwork. Online jobs page for me has been the best source so far. But now the number one source, like you mentioned, is a lead VA bringing on people they know. And then now those guys are bringing on people they know. Has been by far.
We've had good luck with like Fiverr and Upwork for project-based stuff. Like, hey, we're going to implement ClickUp. Who can build this out? That type of stuff. And then I guess we're a little bit higher on what we pay at Lazy H. We're probably like 5 to. We got one that's at like 9, I think, an hour. But he's kind of the lead guy. So.
Yeah. Now we do kind of like an intern program. So we'll bring in someone at like 3 to 4. And train them for 90 days. Typically, it's like one of their first virtual assistant jobs. And so they spend a lot of time with just admin and like tubing at the same time. So we're kind of training them to see if they're a good fit. And the idea was essentially like, hey, we'll start training them and maybe we'll like end up selling them to other companies. I don't think we'll end up doing that, but and then pretty much our range is 4 to 6. And then this is kind of a crazy story. So that guy I was telling you about that kind of created all this stuff, I just gave him 5% of our revenue. So that's how valuable he is for me. So he's in the Philippines making about $8 an hour plus 5% of our net rev. So
he's your bookkeeper, right?
He does everything.
Everything.
Yeah, so he bookkeeps for us. He does all the back end stuff. He hires all of that admin team. So essentially, I meet with that admin team 1 hour a week, and that's it. He manages that entire team. So that was a pretty cool thing to change someone's life financially in another country for sure. So that's where we're at financially for that. Hiring. Any other questions before we move on? Cool.
How important is community
experience?
Yeah, like something you're working on.
For me now, we really want somebody that's got Airbnb experience, ideally. Like as we grow, we may have different needs for tasks. Like we may want to go for somebody that's more of a maintenance dispatcher or something. But if they're going to be guest facing, especially on these major platforms, it's really easy to find somebody with Airbnb experience. You can almost always get somebody that's actually worked for Airbnb, which is a huge plus.
Ideally, what you want, sorry, just to cut in there, is somebody who has who's a manager at Airbnb, because they know like there's support, like there's 3 support levels at Airbnb. You ideally want somebody who's at support 2 or support 3, because because Airbnb has a call center in the Philippines.
What Airbnb usually pays them?
Next to nothing if they're working for me. It's not. Okay.
3 to 5, I think.
There's a call center in the Philippines.
Yeah, those guys are good.
I'm glad I asked that question because I haven't thought.
Yeah, because there's a lot of people who work at just like Airbnb and they're great, but like if you can find like support 2 or support 3, they know like back of the house stuff, and they're like, you need to submit an invoice this way, or this is like my girl used to work in bedbugs department, and so she's like, this is like I would like vet the invoices for anybody that had a bedbug claim, and she's like, this is the process. So like, touch wood, we haven't had one yet, but we don't. But if that does happen, then we have at least a game plan about like what we plan to do next.
So I was curious, you mentioned a couple places, but primarily where are these people coming from? And
like what countries or?
Exactly. Yeah. Where, and then where are you getting the best value? places, who are the easiest to onboard and like integrate into whatever you have going on? I can imagine there's some type of cultural barriers, right? So who's the easiest to slot into whatever system you have, assuming that you've got people from all over the world?
Yeah, I'll take that. So my first one was from Mexico. He was extremely easy because their culture is pretty similar to American, and he worked for like call centers and collections departments and stuff like that, and his accent was minimal. Now everybody on our team is from the Philippines. I would say like for our industry, the Philippines is probably the best like honey hole of where to go, just because of how many Airbnb employees and like just the type of work that they're used to doing over there. We did work. It's also going to depend on who your preferred contractor is, on where you find your stuff. If you're finding them yourself, like I think Philippines is going to be the path of least resistance. But if you engage in some of these companies that are providing VAs to you, there's a chance that they're coming from like India or somewhere in the Middle East. And that's fine. In my personal experience, we've been able to find people from the Philippines that have minimal accents, which is helpful if they're going to be customer facing. And it's nice to have them all from either the same place, just so they culturally like jive and can communicate well, or at least like have a good understanding of like the way that American business and culture works, so that everybody can be on the same page.
If you ever get like a dabble of Eastern Europeans in there, it's part of the integrating.
Yeah, you could. I mean, so like we did have somebody that was like, I guess Pakistani or something for a while, and like it kind of had some challenges. Like it was easier to just have our team mostly be from the Philippines because they have their own channels as well where they're solving stuff so that we don't have to be involved in every single message, and so that's helpful. It doesn't mean that it wouldn't be good to have people from all over, because again, as you grow, like the best accountants might be from somewhere, the best people that understand like maintenance and stuff like that might be from like Latin America, but the best like customer service people might be in the Philippines. So.
But the last thing was the value that you felt like
Oh.
the Philippines was the best value.
Yeah, I would say so. Like Mexico was great when I got started, but the price has gone up there. You know, it very quickly went from $8 an hour for somebody good to 15. So.
And it wasn't as big of an industry in like Central South America, but I think that's really starting to explode, especially if some of these countries like Venezuela are really in a tough spot. They're in the same time zone, which can be really helpful.
Yep.
So like Matt's company, like the CS outsource that's on there, that's where a lot of his are getting sourced from now. It's like Bolivia, Venezuela, things like that. And again, you'll probably get a little bit less accent. So I mean, and again, like there can be particulars with like what you're looking for and like what role you're looking for too. Like,
Yeah.
And this is where like stereotypes kind of come in, right? But it's like true. Like, yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point.
That's
Yeah.
a huge one.
You had one. Yeah, so 2 or 3 small questions. One is, how do you pay them? Actually, physically.
We just PayPal.
We do wise.com, put them on auto pay.
Wise.
Yeah, I like less work. So they get like quarterly bonuses and stuff that I'll manually do, but I set everyone up on wise.com. And as long as they can get an account and give me their username, it's going to tell me if it's going to go to them in pesos or American dollars or whatever. And I just type that conversion in one time and I put it on every other Friday.
And then 2, have you found have you used them for graphics or social media or video editing type stuff?
Yep.
Yeah, I have one. She's been with me for 2 years, and she's at like $5 an hour. She does all the guest communications, and on her time that she has left, which is about 10 to 15 hours a week, she does all of our social media. So if you've ever followed 5 Stars, seen anything that we do, that's someone with 0 social media experience that I've bought training for, you know, and kind of made her into that role. So that's something when we get into this next section that I'll talk about is like, how can you find the strengths of these? And so they're not just sitting there in guest communications and you're like actually utilizing them the entire 40 hours that they're there. And it's exciting for them, right? Like just answering to guest communications can be really boring for anyone, right? And so we're empowering them and like creating bonuses around that and things like that. So I think there's a lot of opportunity with, hey, what are you interested in? What do you like? What do you want to learn? Do you want to do Facebook ads? Here's this training. I'll pay you $500 for it. You can bring this onto your next job. And so that's something I do in my company in general. Every employee, like I want to empower. Like I hope you leave our company in a better place with more skills. And we're happy to give that to you. And we're happy to give you more money as we grow too, to keep you. But if you get to a point where it's not working, like move on and we'll do the same thing for someone else, right?
Was
our team, local team always calls guests, unless it's like past 10 p.m. So we are 90% of the time the ones that call them. So, but no complaints in terms of like guest messaging.
Okay, so just like, yeah, standard type problems or Wi-Fi,
Yeah, exactly.
you still handle all the personal.
Yeah, exactly. So my local team is first tier, and then I'll be last tier.
So we're a little bit different, or at least I guess on my portfolio,
Yeah.
a little bit different. I stopped doing hourly because it was way too much to track on my end. So my graphics and my admin assistant is still hourly because that's just how we started off. And she gives me hours every week. And then we have a software that like takes photos of her screen while she's working because she has a flexible schedule. But for the Airbnb, we just went to salary right away. I didn't want to deal with like who works what time. I don't want to make people's schedules. I did that in the restaurant world. It is not fun. I don't really care about people's days off. So I just changed my model on to fit me. My Airbnb management team doesn't handle any of the graphic work. They don't do any design. They don't do any videos. I hire people who are specialized in those roles, and I give them. I'm like, I have a $500 budget. Like, can you make me 6 videos a week? And they're like, yes, no, whatever it is. And I believe in a 80-20 rule. So they do 80% of the work, I do 20. So I'll do the first 10%, which is I will record the content and I will upload it to like a Google Drive or a shared iCloud folder. They do 80% of the work, so they'll go edit it, make the videos, and then I review at the last 10%. I'll be like, this looks good, this needs editing, and then they go back, do it, we review it, and then it gets posted. And that's worked out for me. I found like for me, like my Airbnb VAs are great for Airbnb. They are not like they don't like doing social media. It's not like their strength. So we just have a different model.
You mentioned that they're not an hourly though. Well, how do you pay the Airbnb folks?
Salary.
Salary.
Yeah, they just have like a
like 500
yeah,
per month or something?
500, 600. My lead girl loves to do team retreats, so they book out Airbnbs in the Philippines. They go to the beach. So I'll throw in a couple $100. They just got back from one. They were karaokeing one night. So they do fun things like that, and I'll just be like, here's an extra $200. Like, have fun.
And they work for you full time.
Yeah. So I got to 24/7 guest comm. That was big for me. It was a mindset thing. Like I was just paranoid that at 2 a.m. something would happen and people wouldn't get in. And I was like, I'll just take the hit like on the first initial months. But so my first, and this is just a very unique structure that just worked out for me. They were doing 6 days a week, 24/7. And then they had like every Wednesday off. And so I think that's what you were asking me this morning. Like, how was your structure? I used to like get on guestcom every Wednesday. Once you stop doing guestcom, you almost forget how to respond to people. So I was just getting annoyed and like replying back like, did you not read the manual? And I was, yeah, I was not. There was a moment in there, and my team would get back on, and they were like, "What did you do?" And I was like, "I need to be off." And they're like, "Can you just pay us like a few $100 extra, and we'll just go to 7 days a week?" And they bought on a third VA, and then I was really losing money. So then I was like, "Okay, like now I've got to go grow." But it got me out of the thing. So like I logged out of the Airbnb app. I got anxiety like straight up from like the ding on like Friday night because my restaurant was busy. Friday night is big at restaurants. Then I had all of these people being like, I can't get into the door. There's a hair on the sheet, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, I can't do this anymore, man. Like, oh my God.
If you can't get in the door, how do you know there's a hair on the sheet?
24/7 though. I just want, before we move on.
Yeah.
How did you get them to work around the clock?
They pitched me. I mean, I didn't.
And they decided the schedule.
Yeah, so I still even today do not make schedules for my kind of team, like the hotels and this. I have a very unique structure where I pay my lead VA and she then pays everybody else out. It's very unique to me, but it does work. And then the social media accounting is all separate, and they're kind of on the same wise, and everybody gets paid out every week. That's actually been big for us, like paying out weekly. We do that even at my restaurant. Like people like getting paid more frequently. So we've hired a lot of talent that way.
Question. You mentioned culture with like VAs. They all know each other?
Mine do. They all live in Manila. So this is something I ask. I'm like, where do you live? How good is the internet? And what happens?
Before they know each other now.
They knew each other from working from Airbnb. They all worked in the same block, and like I guess I just picked up the whole row.
Yeah. Well, would you assume that if you find one and then you find one later on that like probably know each other through the Airbnb channels, or is it?
It's a pretty big company. I think that's pretty rare. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, like, we ended up like,
Get along.
what's that?
Like you had mentioned that like the guy from Pakistan didn't get along with the
they were not communicating well on the platform, or was it like?
Yeah, it's not so much that they didn't get along. It's just like these like since these guys are all from at least like the same country, like they just kind of know how to communicate. Whereas like you have a group of Americans and then a group of people from the Philippines, and then you throw in somebody from a totally different culture. It just caused a lot of confusion. Yeah.
They were talking to each other in the service of what you needed to do.
Yeah, but whenever we had like a guy from Mexico working with the people from the Philippines, like it was actually fine. So
Let's do two more.
I'm just curious with the 24/7 because you mentioned their like flexible schedule as well. Do you or does your lead VA structure it so that this person is 7 a.m. to this time and so forth, so that there's always someone on?
Exactly. And I've told my VAs, like, again, like when I like started doing this, like I just wanted to get off, and I was like, I don't care if you go to the grocery store, I don't care if you're out doing things, as long as you're doing what I do, which is just answering the messages. Like I want all messages answered within 15 minutes. I don't use Guesty. I know Guesty has a feature where you can track that. I didn't have that. But what I do have is if you can do this on any phone, but on an iPhone, you can put it like so the notification shows up only if you like push up on the screen. So I would like check every like 30 minutes when I first started. And if they didn't respond within 15 minutes, I'd be like, hey, like I need somebody on.
So the only thing they're doing is guest comms.
They were at that point.
Yeah.
And then she told me, my lead, which was like, I want to grow with your company. I want to be like, this is who I want to work for. So will you let me do other things? And I was like, sure. Like, what do you want to do? And she was like, I want to be, so the other cool thing, which we have talked about in hiring, was my VA used to work for other property managers in Australia, in Phoenix. So she had experience working for a property management company. So she brought a lot of experience. When I had 6 properties, I didn't have the system or the structure. She's like, this is how we built out the Monday board. This is how we do reservation audits. This is how I do XYZ. So she's like a talent for me. Like she knows a lot more than I do. Even today when we're in the hotel game, she knows how to get this listed on booking.com. I still can't even log into booking.com. So yeah, it is a nightmare. Try Agoda. That is awful.
Anyways, it's more process questions, but I don't want to mess up your flow. So
Yeah.
Just tell me
Let's do one more hirings and then. Go ahead, Blake.
How many VAs? How many VAs like cover, let's say, for 1 unit, and then for Airbnb? I'll say you have a bunch of different rooms. How many VAs do you need actually to cover all of the?
If you want 24/7, 365 for just 1 unit.
1 unit versus like, let's say you have 100.
Oh, I get what you're saying.
How do you scale?
Yeah, I mean, if I had 1 unit, I personally like wouldn't do 24/7 because it just wouldn't make sense. I probably until like even 10.
Yeah, 10.
Like you could get that going. But typically that takes about, depending on how much they want to work. If you look at those hours, I think that's like 4 to 5.
it's definitely 4.
Full-time staff if you want 24/7.
Mm-hmm.
Unless you have people that are just willing to, you can kind of negotiate like, hey, you can do whatever you want. If it's just guest comms, you can get people that have like other properties and things like that, and so they're like on for you for responses, but like it's not their full-time job too. And that's why there's so many options as you see, like how to do this. There's literally like you just got to figure out your goals and what you want. I personally don't let anyone else work for another company while they're working for me. That's just a rule we've made. But a lot of people have been successful hiring people that are working for like 3 or 4 because they're able to bring all the systems from other companies into their own. And they might be, much more willing to work like a 12 or 14-hour shift, making $3 or $4 an hour because they're doing 4 at the same time. So all sorts of different ways you can go about it. Well, we're going to move on to training, but if it has to do with that, then we're going to bring you back in. That sound good? Cool.
I have sort of a training question. So when they're communicating, or at what point are they always communicating as you, or at what point do you kind of let them communicate as you versus some other profile?
Yeah, so we use Google Workspace. And so they have an email for them, and they have a Cohost account. And so they're added as co-hosts on all of my listings. So I started with that on Airbnb, and I like got rid of like they couldn't run reports and things. And then like 2 weeks in, I let them have access to OwnerRes. And then, but I was like, you can't edit anything. I think I never changed that setting. So they can make edits, but they can't view like reports and stuff. I've always let somebody else, like they're a co-host basically on the account. That doesn't work for Verbo though. So on Verbo, they're just me basically. Yeah.
So ours is the opposite. They're showing up as us from day one. Yeah,
Same.
cut and dry. Yeah.
Yep, they act like us until we have to call them or do whatever.
Yeah, I was at an event. I was at a thing yesterday. We had somebody shooting a commercial at one of our houses, and the lady there was like, "I've been talking to Marilyn, and that's my wife." She's like, "She's so sweet." I was like, "You've been talking to John," and yes, he is. But yeah.
I have a question. So with all of them kind of speaking as you, like, how do you keep that wording cohesive? How do you keep, what I've found every once in a while when we first hire is we get a lot of maybe British terms or whatever it might be that just feels a little wonky. So is there anything you do to kind of?
Yeah, that's really hard. That's kind of like a control issue that like, so we have prompts for sure. There were some very weird phrases that were coming up like when we first hired people. That's kind of part of the culture, and like we have a bunch of different prompts. So I mean, for every question, we probably have an answer for it in our glossary somewhere. So they start to learn it. I'm very informal with my guests because it's Lucas and Nicole, and so hey, how y'all doing? So that's how we talk with our guests. And they were very, hello, sir. Dude, so it was very, very different. But at the end of the day, it's like it doesn't really matter. I think it's like when you step back and you like look at it, it's like one person said yes, sir, and one person said y'all, So I think that you have to let go of that a little bit, otherwise it'll drive you fucking insane.
Yeah.
When you're like trying to control like verbiage and things like that, you do have to step back. And if it doesn't make sense, that's one thing, right? But if it's just like, oh, these people sound like a little different, to me, I think you kind of just back off that. Unless you have someone, then like I would put Gene, right, who looks over them and just say, hey, can you just work with them a little bit on like terms or whatever? But I had to really step back on that when I first started because like I was in there like correcting every message. Like, why do I have a VA if I'm the kid here, like trying to manage all those little things?
Sure.
Cool. So training. So we've all done it a certain way, but some of these people don't have VAs. So like if you are starting today, knowing your processes, how would you go about? So we've hired someone, we've brought them on. Like what does the first week to 30 days look like to get them trained into your system? You have let's just say you have zero systems set up for them so far. So you're starting from scratch. How would you start?
If I were starting over again today, hiring my first VA, how would I start?
Like, what would that training schedule look like for them?
Yeah.
For the first, 7 to 30 days.
Yeah. So first of all, I would make sure that whoever I hired has the personality type that they're going to be willing to log everything we're doing and actually create that manual, because that's not a strength of mine. I would take more time reflecting and thinking about what all I want them to do, and at least having that in a bullet list. And I would do a lot of like screen share and hands-on, but I would make sure that they have the skill set to actually document that stuff and create the SOP that we can then build off of. Because that's a mistake that I made with my first VA. Like he was really good and very adaptable, and that's what made him so strong, because I needed him to do 10 or 15 things, but he also wasn't great at like creating the process for the next person up. So that's one thought, I guess.
Yeah, for me, first thing, get them a Google Workspace email so that you have the content, but if they leave, everything's on your, like I would like to have control. I pay for the LastPass so I can share all of the passwords without them actually seeing the password. Monday.com, Asana, it doesn't matter what software you have on the back end, you just need something. Obviously, I want them to have a good input in it, but at the end of the day, it's kind of like what I like. The Monday was the first time I just went with her, and I was like, I hope she stays because I hate Monday. And then screen sharing was like, I just sat there for like 8 hours and I was like, this is how you do this, this is how you do this. And then I would be like, hey, I guess like asked a message. So I asked them to take a screenshot of what the guest said, type in their response. So we used WhatsApp for the longest time until we moved over to Slack. So on WhatsApp, like put in your response. I would look over the response. I'm like, this looks good. You can send it. Or like I would just do a thumbs up. And then we started training that way. And then it got better. And then I have them always make the property DNA. So I'm like, go through the last 6 months of guest comm, and now you create each file per property and you start deep diving. So that's exactly how I would do it.
That's awesome.
How do you even get to that point, like the list of like what you want them to do, right? Did you have to have like a couple days to yourself and like put up sticky notes to kind of,
no, I made them do it. So they created their daily task list. So the way you have it on yours, where you have this. So I had them create it. I was like, oh, like when you log in, like what is the first thing you do? And so like I didn't realize this intuitively, but I was like, I was checking Airbnb messages. That's still the first thing I do when I wake up today. Oh. And so I was like, yeah.
Oh.
And so
I don't even know how to get into my Airbnb account.
And so I was like, okay, like log into Airbnb, make sure all the cameras are up, make sure at 12 p.m. we're checking the door locks to make sure the cleaners are gone. But they've changed. But I started with them. And then I was like, oh, like we totally forgot to pay this cleaner. So that was one thing where I was like missing invoices left and right, which is not how I like to run my companies. So I moved all the invoices. So I have a thing set up in my email, which forwards all the emails over to their email that are Airbnb. And so now like my team pays all of the invoices once a week. But we have a meeting every Monday where we go through all pending invoices on the Monday board. I go approved, and then they make the payments for all of them. But all of that got built like 6-8 months into it. Like right off the bat, you were like, I don't know, just answer people and don't mess it up.
I guess to build on that, like you have to create a trackable daily list of things that they are reporting back. So like you have to have things they do at check-in that are trackable, whether it's in a Google Sheet, whether it's in Asana Monday, we use ClickUp currently, doesn't matter. And then you have to have some sort of end of shift report, and then you have to be able to build out a process where if something happens that you haven't seen before, where you have to get involved, that you're injecting that into the SOP from now on. And so it's like, as you're building this stuff out, whether it is Monday or Asana or whatever, like you have a property profile, you get a question asked, and then you're like, hey, you know what? Like one of the things I would do, like whenever we went through a lot of growth, and so we hired a few new VAs, and I was like, I want you guys to tell me how to get into every single property if the door lock is not working, like code's not working and the battery's not responding. I need you to tell me that you can get into all 30 of these properties, and like where does it live in there? Do we need to clean it up? Like you can actually really systematize your company, especially if you have people working super late at night. You can give them these meticulous tasks and they'll do a really good job, but you build it over time. And then to echo Rashmi, like at Lazy H Retreats, we give everybody a generic email address. So it might be admin at Lazy H Retreats, clients at Lazy H Retreats, support at Lazy H Retreats, stay at Lazy H Retreats. And that way, inevitably, when people don't work out, we just change the password, shut it down. And when the next person comes in, they get that email address and everything. We have a shared folder in LastPass, so they can't see the passwords, but they have access to log into stuff. So that's a good thing to build out as well. But you don't want to give everyone, like we learned that when we had like 2 VAs in a row that we fired, and we're like, oh, I have Tiffany at Lazy H Retreats now. I got to do something with this email, so I got to like change it. Yeah. So that's just one little trick we've learned as well.
And what just to start, so my first VA, I think we had like 8 to 10 properties. And his first like 30 days, all he did was dig through the history in the last year of every single message that I sent to guests. And he just made an entire glossary of all of those responses. Yep. So now we had a listing description for each place, right? Hey, here's what the driveway's like, here's what the parking like, here's how you enter, blah, blah, right? The basics. And then it was all of the FAQs in one other document for that property. So that was like essentially his first task, is like, hey, go through all those messages, write the responses. And now to your point, well, how did Lucas answer the question? Well, you have a pretty good idea of how I answered it based off restaurant recommendations, blah, 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 right? So that was the first task I did. Probably the best advice I've gotten on this stuff is like, well, just tape yourself throughout the day. Just throw on a loom and just tape your screen and exactly what you're doing. I never took that advice, but it's probably the best advice. Luckily, I had a VA that was so awesome at creating all these SOPs for me, that worked out. But if I was starting today and I didn't have that, that's 100% what I would do. I would take my 8-hour day, I'd throw on Loom, and I would just talk through everything that I'm doing. I'm logging on Airbnb, I'm doing this, I'm checking messages here, here's how I go to this screen. And you're sharing a screen at the same time that you're doing a video, and you're popping that in a Google folder. super easy way to train people, right? Cool. Go ahead.
So when you have multiple VAs, so right now we have one that's 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. and a 3 p.m. to midnight Monday through Friday, and we're bringing in a couple more so I can fire myself on the weekend as well. What I'm finding, and this is new for us having this structure, what I'm finding is, like maybe we were knee deep in a plumbing issue with, the morning VA, and then it's not finished. And so is there some sort of handoff so that you can catch up the person that's coming in at 3, has never heard of what the hell's going on? So that, like, is there some sort of structure you're using to kind of create that sort of handoff? Or
Yeah, we do an hour overlap.
Okay.
So the last shift is always an hour. Rather than spend it to each other, hopefully chat. They love each other. They're like family. So, and then at that same time, they're catching up. Here's all the stuff I have to finish. Here's this thing going on with this guest. And a lot of that comes down to like they're starting their opening tasks while they're doing that, and so they're able to communicate with that person, while that's going on. So.
Yeah, same. We have a shift overlap for everybody. We're using ClickUp, a combination of ClickUp, which it could be Trello, could be Monday, could be Asana, it doesn't matter. But we have a maintenance board and a ticket system. And you're always going to create a ticket, but also the end of shift report has got several items they're going to cover. So the end of shift report is going to cover that, like, hey, this is happening and is unresolved at this property. There's a ticket created. Jana, please work on this. And so we've got that living, breathing board. And then it's also like the end of shift report is honestly for us. Like they've already talked about it during the overlap and it's already on the board. That's like the one involvement I still have is I read the end of shift reports just to see what maintenance stuff's going on, see if there were any, they tell us how many reviews came in, how many stars they were, what they're doing if it was less than 5, but it's all also living in ClickUp the whole time.
One of the things we implemented over at Lazy H was at 4 p.m. we started doing daily calls with Chelsea, who was the ops manager for Lazy H. What we started realizing was the VAs were handing tasks off to each other, but both of them didn't understand what the actual problem was. So for example, my VAs have told me they didn't know what HVAC systems were. They're like, what is that? And I was like, no one asked me, or like didn't ask me like what a hot tub was, or like little things that are like completely normal. And they're like, oh, you mean like an AC? They're like, well, like I have a fan. So like it's hard to like communicate like these like plumbing issues. I don't understand plumbing, so they obviously are not. So we were having just like communication gaps. And so Chelsea, I think, was really good in bridging that gap. We have, I don't think we do them daily now. Maybe they're like once a week now, but that was a huge proponent. So like one of the big things that was happening with us is the hot tubs were going on eco mode, and like the guest is complaining. The VA is trying to like figure out what a hot tub is. And then like how do you like take it off eco mode instead of us paying $100 for a handyman to come out? And so like it was something just as like getting on a phone call and being like I had an issue last night with like a laundry machine that needs a French drain, and they were like, so I've trained my team to be like, go to Google and type in like French drain or YouTube and like watch 3 videos to understand at least like what we're talking about. And that 4 p.m. call I think really helped like bridge the gap. What? I wasn't doing anything. I just saw it on like the thing, and I was like,
our big one is septic. Yeah. We have a lot of septic systems, and so.
Yeah, I need to go YouTube that
it's
one
just a
too.
trench with a bunch of rocks in it, so water can flow.
Okay, there we go. See. Yeah.
I would never hear that term from a guest.
Yeah, well, the housekeeper messaged the team, and then they were like, we need to build this out. And I was like, okay, that sounds like a lot of money.
Yeah, I have a question about like vendors. So do you have like, okay, these are the AC guys and go in this order if there's an issue, plumbers,
Yep.
that sort of thing?
Yeah, I'll take that one because we've had some growing pains with that. Whenever we first started handing everything over to VAs, we had a lot of vendors get really pissed at us because they're going from talking to me or Chelsea, who understands maintenance and understands what these problems are, to talking to any of the 3 VAs and they don't know what's going on. They mix up vendors. They're calling pool companies to fix the AC that's at the pool because they're misunderstanding things. Like that's legitimately what happens. So that's a great question. Within ClickUp, we also have property sections that also tags to the homeowner where we have information on them. We have preferred vendors for that, and then we just have vendors in general. So you can get to it from property, and the vendors can be tagged to the property, or you can go to vendors, and then we have preferred. The other thing is, as you grow, you want one person that's there during the heaviest maintenance hours to be the only point of contact to talk to vendors. You don't want multiple people to do it. And so like John is our lead VA, but he also has gotten to where he really understands maintenance. So nobody talks to vendors unless it's John. Cleaners is a little different, but still the problem is your VAs don't understand what task is a handyman or a specialist versus what should your cleaner go back and fix. So if you have too many cooks in the kitchen there, they're going to be making demands of your cleaners that aren't in their wheelhouse, and they're going to get pissed. So yes, you have to have your vendors. You have to note who your primary is, remove the bad ones. You have to have somebody owning that, and ideally like one person that's overseeing that piece of the business.
Who writes your desk reviews? Who writes them? So they do. So it's all automated, and then if we have a bad guess, then we just flag it. And so take that out of the automation system, and then they'll bring it back to our Monday or Thursday meeting and say, hey, like, what do you want me to review this guest? So everything is automated. We give everyone 5 stars automatically, unless they're flagged. So automated system.
What do you use to automate?
That's inhospitable.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they're a great guest. Like we used to try to give a 5-star review. And
ours is the same, and it's like if we have any awkward communication with that guest, or we have any reason to believe they're not going to leave us 5 stars, it's going to be seen in the end of day report, and in that end of day report, it's going to say that we're having XYZ issue. We turned off all review prompts, and so that way we're not reminding them to leave us a review. We're not leaving them one, but any reviews that come in, it's our policy that we publicly respond. So they're doing that manually.
Yeah, we've made a big push for Google reviews on the hotels and even at Lazy H. So now like guests that are like really nice to us in this, we're like, hey, we're trying to grow our Google review. So that process has been more manual, but I think in the long run, it's really going to pay off.
Yeah.
Because we want to be top of Google.
So you mentioned about vendors for vendors that you work out, right? Is that something that you work out per territory? Because you mentioned that you're kind of all around. Mm-hmm. Like, how are you doing that, or is that something you do days, or like do you have someone as like a single point of contact that's like a super knowledgeable person about all these type of things that you kind of like to say, hey, who are the good people in town for A, B, C, D, build me a list? Like, how do you do that?
Yeah, so yes to everything, because if you're in multiple markets, every market's different. We have markets where we have a great labor pool. We have markets where it's awful, like the Gulf Coast. So in the Gulf Coast, we kind of have one go-to guy that happens to own a pest control company and is also very handy and knows everyone. So if we don't have a go-to vendor, we start with a call to that guy. But this is a living, breathing system and process that you will always have to oversee, because if you completely pawn it off, you're the only one that can monitor, is that invoice fair? Was the work good quality?
So basically just kind of payment, calling people, figuring out what they're doing.
Yeah, I mean that's why it's best to, like, as much as I like being in different markets to prevent seasonality and be diversified and stuff, you only want to go into as much as you can handle where you can saturate in that market, because of having good cleaners, good handyman, good HVAC people, and all of that. And then you're going to make sure that you have preferred for each of that, and that like you need a good enough VA that is going to scrub the bad ones, keep working with the good ones, also not piss off the good ones. And that is one area that as the owner you still need to ultimately oversee, because the cost can get really high.
Yeah,
so
I don't know. It makes me upset of like people just feeling like, oh, you just go into any market and do it from anywhere, and it's all virtual. I've never seen someone do that successfully. It's a good. It's like,
very difficult.
Yeah, it's like a good manager, unless you're like willing to really put that time. So like, if you're gonna offer me a property in a place that's gonna make $300,000 a year, I'll build a team around that and make that work. But like most of those people, it's like they just rely on their cleaners to do like everything, right? It's just like. And then like you see that like quality drop, and like it takes a while to find a plumber that's not going to charge you $700 for doing something that's $350. And it's like, well, who feels that, right? It's always going to be that owner that's feeling that on the back end, and that's why the PMs don't really care. It's like
you're downstream of everything.
Yeah, and so I can manage in every market, no question. I mean, I gotta have 1,000 properties by now, but like I couldn't keep the quality the same, and I think that's like we all want that quality to be really great. And expect a lot from ourselves. So because of that, then we're having to do all this homework of like not just calling like the plumber that comes up on #1 on Google. Like we're trying to find someone who's really, really good that's still giving us like a solid deal, right? Like a smaller guy. Those are hard to find.
So you mentioned you have guest complaints, big fat spreadsheet, put them through, all the past few years, right? Do you have that kind of spreadsheet for quotes or comms with vendors, basically like something to weed out somebody who's trying to do over?
We don't do any, our VAs don't handle any of that stuff, so that's still our local team.
I'm just saying documentation.
But
Yeah.
we do.
Ours is process driven. So our process, what we make, the contract we make our owners sign is that if we feel in good faith or have a quote that we can resolve an issue for $150 or less, you're letting us handle that. If it's above that, we're only going to do it if it's after hours and we can't reach you or we deem it necessary for the property for either the integrity of your property or safety.
Communicating with them.
Yeah. So that way, yeah. And so ultimately, you know, my other two VAs that aren't the lead maintenance people, they're mostly there after hours. And so they are trained to, if this is something that's not going to affect the stay and it's not something major, they're going to tag it and let John handle it or get with Chelsea if it's after hours and escalate it. And that way, John, like, you know, to go back to the VA side of this, the VAs, it's pretty easy to find a VA that's good at the softwares you're going to use and guest comms. If you find a VA that you can train or is good on the maintenance side, like that's gold, because them being able to understand how to talk to the right vendors, procure quotes, vet them, you know, build a relationship, like that's something really important. But you have to have those systems and processes in. I mean, you hire a lot of VAs and you elevate the rock stars, you know.
I go a little bit different. So the way I've done it, which I didn't realize other people did it differently. I live in a lot of Facebook groups, and so I'd only help manage in the Texas Hill Country, but like I've personally bought in 5 different states, and we operate in 5 different states for my personal portfolio. So I live in every Facebook group there is, and my graphic designer and my admin VA, she has access to my personal Facebook, and so I have a habit of just saving threads. And we have a living, breathing Excel document per market that has so I'm in Arkansas, right? So I have literally an entire spreadsheet that has cleaners, handyman, AC, because a lot of these guys in these rural vacation markets aren't first page of Google. Like it's a cell phone number. You know, like I hope this works. So we have like the thread, and so like there's a document basically that has like their number, but it also has who referenced them and like literally like the link to their Facebook profile. So if I need to use like a vendor, I'll like message the Facebook profile and be like, hey, I saw you recommended this plumber. Can we talk? Like, how was this plumber? They're like, it's great, it's bad. And then anyone that we don't like is like marked in red. And then anyone we've used is marked in like green, basically. So that's one way we've built out a team, especially in like short-term rentals when you need designers, where you need installers, like all of these kinds of weird tasks, basically. Like people like go to TaskRabbit. I'm like, there's no TaskRabbit in Eureka Springs, Arkansas. Like,
yeah.
I am the TaskRabbit, so I gotta like find people. So Facebook groups have been a huge lead source, but then vetting that, and then cleaners are the other second part. But to find a good cleaner, you really have to dig into Facebook groups.
So you said find a good cleaners are like, are the cleaners referring like vendors and stuff to you, or people referring cleaners?
Oh yeah.
Both, yeah. I talk to investors in that market. The first call, like if I'm buying in a market, is like the top 5 investors in that market. I'm like, hey, I saw you have a vacation rental. Can we talk? Can I buy you a coffee? And I'm like, how's your property doing? Who's your cleaner? Who's your handyman? What insurance company do you use? I mean, I like get everything, and then I start working backwards, and then I'll ask the cleaner. Usually in smaller markets, the cleaner's husband's usually a handyman, and so yeah, and so they'll like fix like a leaky, and they'll be like, it's $50, and I'm like, here you go. So that's worked for us, but management is completely different. Like management definitely, everything Scriven said. This is just from my personal portfolio where I own the real estate.
He's my husband. He's a handyman, and I'm a cleaner.
See?
Oh, yeah. That's what I'm talking about.
It works.
So y'all, we only got about 5 to 10 minutes left. We're this thing on time. So I just want to point y'all to this really quick. This is just our, like, an hour before this, I asked my VAs to create this for you, so that's why it's so well done. So I apologize for that. But all this is like our opening daily admin task. So a person logs on, and this is everything that they're checking right when they log on. Closing daily admin tasks. So again, this is a Google sheet. They check all this stuff, and they send an email to us. That would be Gene who looks over them, and to myself. So I'm not going to go through all of that, but I think this gives you a really good idea of what those tasks might break out to be. It's going to be totally different based off your properties and what you want them to do. But for us, that's a lot of pools and spas and checking that kind of stuff. You know, a lot of our stuff is automated with locks, but they're going in and checking and making sure like that's inputted in there. The next one is a new booking. So every new booking that we get that comes in, this is kind of an example of an SOP that comes with that. So they get a new booking, and then they're looking at all of these things just based off that one booking. You can see like we keep them busy, right? Like they're having to check through a list for like everything that's happening. And then you'll see our SOPs. So this is kind of like just a screenshot of all the different options that we have there. Obviously, I didn't print out all our SOPs. That would be 1,000 pages. But I just wanted to kind of give you an example of what that could look like. So you go to the next page, it says procedures, and it's like early check-in, late checkout, check pending renter agreement. And so these are all the breakouts, so nothing is getting missed, right? So I say all of this as you look through this to be like, damn, dude, this is a lot. Like, and so, you know, we get these events sponsored now, but we get these events sponsored by people that we think do a great job. And so again, when I started this, I said like, we're going to present to you what we all do. None of us at this point are using those services where you're hiring someone, they're managing it for you. But I would sure as heck think about that if this was not like my full-time gig. So there's a lot of services out there, including, you know, CS Outsource, that'll hire these people, that'll create all of this stuff for you, that'll manage them daily, that they'll get those checklists sent to them. So just know that's an option too. So I hope we presented all of those options. You can find people that will work 5 hours a week. You can find people that will work 70 hours a week, right? You can find people that are $15 an hour that are completely trained through an organization, or you can go directly to yourself, which is going to be a lot more work, but you could hire someone for $350. So all across the board, there's tons of options for virtual assistants. My final advice would be just hire one.
Yeah.
Like why
hire one and figure it out.
It's $4, $5 an hour, right? So like however you're doing it, just hire them, and if they're bad, get rid of them and start over, right? But like keep doing that until you find the right one that may even be able to build this out for you. I didn't do any of this, y'all. This is all from a guy that was making $5 an hour and now makes a shit ton more. But like, you know, this has been 3 years with us, so I think they're incredibly valuable. I don't know if y'all feel like this in the industry, but like you feel handcuffed to your property. You feel like you can't be with your family. You feel like you can't be off your phone. You can't go on vacation without Wi-Fi. And so this is how you solve that. You have people that you trust that have SOPs built out that are able to start answering this. And this can just be little by little. So I said that was my last advice. Here's my last advice. Figure out like what are the 5 main tasks that you want them to handle. Start those Loom videos, help them create it, and just start small, right? If that's 10 hours per week, if that's 20 hours per week, that's fine. But just start small. It doesn't have to be this. This doesn't have to overwhelm you that you need like 100 pages of SOPs. Just start really small and like what are the 5 things you want to take off your plate and who do you hire to solve that problem? So we'll end with some questions, and then Amelia will close us out. So last final questions we'll have 5 minutes for, and then we'll have Amelia close us out.
Where do you store the SOP videos? That was Google Sites, it looks like. Do you guys use Google Sites too, or is it Google Drive?
Ours are mostly in Google Drive and ClickUp.
Yep. The workspace from Google. Yeah. Okay. It's a Google Drive. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm here after taking inspiration from you, Rashmi, because I'm a realtor. So I'm getting into STR now.
Love it.
So I'm running a small catering business also. That's what I got connected.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. So I do you train people like who wants to come into STR? Do you have videos in place or courses in place or coaching in place so that I can also get into STR, which I'm planning to?
Definitely. We can talk about this afterwards. Lucas and I were just talking about this.
Yeah.
And we'll help. But yeah, I'm happy to chat about that. Absolutely.
I say start with Cohost. That's the best way to learn. Just get your feet wet. Yeah, low commitment, easy, and that's how you're going to learn.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
You mentioned going through a stack of people having 15-minute interviews, cutting off at 3 minutes.
Yep.
Like, what would you say are maybe like top 3 criteria? Like, really, like
have them do a few. I have them do a few tasks. So I ask them to share their screen, and I'm like, hey, find me the best Mexican restaurant in this area. So I'd have them do that, and then I'd have them, hey, let's not talk at all. I'm going to type to you, and here's my problem, and then just write back to me like you're like I'm a guest, right? So I'm like, hey, I'm here at the house. I'm locked out. Yep, and so, and I'm watching them if they're responding or fumbling around, and then a lot of it is going to be English, right? Like how proficient are they in that? And like a lot of times, again, I don't try to figure out too much more of them because I'm hiring 5 of them. So like, I just rather do that.
Well, no, that's a good baseline test.
Yeah.
Search engine test, problem solution test.
Yep. So yeah, so we do those 2, and then I do like a phone call where I'm like, okay, now I'm the guest and you're talking to me, and here's my problem, and I'm gonna be really rude to you, so let's see how you respond. And I'll be like, hey, like, why do you have
Airbnb guests are never rude.
Yeah.
That's
I can tell you're in the industry. Anybody else?
I got one. If you are hiring your first VA today, what would be your top 3 tasks you would ask them to handle?
Yes, communications. Like build it. Like, what do you do for locks? Do you do that manually, or is that automated?
Somewhat automated, some manual.
Yeah, so I'd have them do the locks. I'd have guest communications, and then I'd have them watch my cameras to make sure there's no parties happening. That's me.
Yeah, it would be guest communication. I would create a criteria for listing audits and some really basic stuff like that's easy where they can't screw things up, like moving a couple of pictures around in my top 5 or little things that help the algorithm. And then kind of like what they said, I would have them read back through a lot of the communications and create FAQ documents about the properties. Yeah, and then I would also like one thing to reflect on would be like, what would it look like if it was just so well built out from a process standpoint? Because then you'll start brainstorming and create a list. Like somebody would be checking at noon on every day that there's a checkout to look at the lock and make sure the cleaners have made entry. I would be looking at this on dates that there's a check-in. And so you can really throttle the quality by just having somebody stay on that because they're on the computer and they can send messages and stuff.
Yep, exactly what they said. The only thing I would change is the cameras. We check for pets. Like when people are checking in, we'll try to like go for that. And if they brought a pet and didn't pay, I'm like, let's collect that pet fee because that affects my bottom line.
I have one last question. Have you seen it make a direct impact in increasing revenue?
Yes, 100%. You can just scale so much faster. But honestly, like I don't have to answer it. Like my time is a little bit more valuable than answering what's the Wi-Fi code or whatever it is. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, for sure. And just to answer that, like, as you build this and as you build it better, like to Scriven's point is like, one of our tasks every day is to go in, change our listing around, right? Do things for SEO algorithms. So all of that stuff is then going to help revenue go up. So some of those larger tasks I haven't handed over, like revenue management, but other people use revenue management companies for $40 a month. So, I mean, there's all sorts of places out there, and as you scale, you just start realizing, like, you can't do it all, right?
Yeah.
So, and every person's going to be different. Like, we have very similar business models, and yet you heard, like, we all have our VAs doing different things in different ways, and there's 100 ways to do that always in business. But I think there's no question that it's going to help your revenue and more get your life back, right? Which is important because most of us are either trying to leave a job to do this stuff or we already have. And I know that was like me when I first got into it. I was like, I left because I had one bad boss and then I had 15 bad bosses. I'm like, what the fuck did I do? Like, I'm more stressed out doing this. And so it was going back and having to redo all that, fire all my bad owners, put people in place to kind of take some of the stuff away.
Yeah, I'll just add one thing to that. Like we're not perfect by any means, but I would say there's really only 2 to 3 things that like I take ownership of in our business. Like I could not tell you the last time I've talked to a guest, that I've messed with a listing, that I've gotten into any of the platforms. I oversee pricing, but even by overseeing pricing of 40-something properties, we outsource some of the pricing to a contractor, but one of our VAs is trained enough where every day Rashmi's given him metrics. Anything that meets these 2 criteria, it goes on the this property needs love list, and you send that in an email once a week. So if its occupancy is less than this in the next 14 days, like that's where we get aggressive and I'll get in and oversee it. So like the only few things I have left are a little tiny bit of revenue management, like probably an hour a week. That's including like researching and doing reports, and then signing clients. Like that's and I'm working on getting out of owner communications. Like that's the other thing that I'm working on offboarding. But if as soon as I'll still sign clients, but they won't have my direct, like it's all going to go through one of my VA's emails, and she's setting up the Zoom stuff. So they won't have my cell phone. They won't have my email address. For all intents and purposes, I'm a business development or a sales guy, and like I won't be able to be contacted. So those are like the last two things I'm running on 45 properties.
You gotta remember, he still has a W-2.
Yeah.
He's running this entire portfolio, so, you know.
So I pay extra so I can do less. That's why Lucas's business makes money.
I want to give a last thank you to our sponsors. So it's CS Outsource. They do help you hire VAs end to end. They'll help you get set up. So please check them out. They do free consultations, and they have different tiers. So we do have a flyer for them over there.
Bookkeeping for them, y'all. If you're struggling with bookkeeping, that is like one of the most affordable ways to do it. It's get a VA that's like partial for you, and they can do all your bookkeeping for you. So if there's nothing else, like that is a massive part of the like that I didn't want a part of. So that's a huge recommendation. It's something that they really excel in.
Yeah. And then we're just grateful for all of you. Like if you don't have a VA already, I hope this inspired you to go do it. So I'm definitely going to go try it. And then for everyone that already has VAs, I hope it gave you some positive things that you can do to improve the experience. And then I thought it'd be good to take a group photo. So we've never had a professional.
Can we go to the pool, to the rooftop?
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah,
Let's do it.
Want your mic back?
That's $20, dude.
Thank you.